I'm going to ask you 3 questions throughout this presentation. And the first one I'm going to ask you immediately. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to turn to the person next to you. And Josta's going to come round and maybe get some answers to this question. But the question I'm going to ask you is this one. If you really knew me, you would know that. And you're going to finish that question at the person sat next to you. Now, this is me. So if I answer the question, if you really knew me, you'd know that before the pandemic started, I was doing my mountain leader training, and that kind of got cut short because of the pandemic. I love going up mountains, and thankfully, I live right next to some. This is my good friend who I'll talk about later on, and that's us drinking whiskey at the top of a mountain. But you turn to someone next to you, just a couple of minutes. If you really knew me, you'd know that, ... Finish that sentence. Off you go now.
I'd answer that I have a parrot, and that's something everybody knows. All my colleagues know that because he always screams through Teams meetings.
Did you said parrot, not
parrot?
Parrot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
parrot.
parrot. Good. Okay.
Yeah, that's really extraordinary. And what kinds of things does he scream then?
He cannot talk, but he just wants attention, and he screams for my attention because he thinks I'm talking to him and not to my colleagues.
Ah, very good. Okay, thank you for that. Who else have we got?
Okay.
Yeah, so just choose someone at random.
If you really knew me, you would know that.
My parents are deaf.
Deaf?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that I came in this business.
Oh, and what is your business then?
The bibliotheek work.
Yeah, okay. You mentioned you started by going into libraries because you learned to speak there, or?
No, the connection is lage lettertijd. I don't
of course.
know the word in English.
Illiteracy.
Yeah, so that's my connection.
I don't think I would have known that because you've all got so much in common. There's a reason why you're here today. You hold that in common. But everyone in this room is different in some way. Something, that little spark inside you that makes you you and do what the things that you want to do. And so that guy who was just on the screen there, a lot of the images that you see in this presentation, he drew. You know, that's kind of his passion in life. And now he does it for his job and for work. It used to be something he did on the side. So you can use any of these images if you want to kind of use them in your work as well. It's all Creative Commons licensed. But the point I want to make before I get into anything technical is that all of the experiences that you have in life, they all have value, either to you or your friends or your colleagues. And so when we think about things like credentials and certificates and that kind of thing, they're these big, chunky, like degrees and diplomas and certificates and all those kinds of things. But what I'm here today to talk to you about is all of the little stones in the jar, the smaller things, the things that make you, you. Because if I went to all of your LinkedIn profiles, they probably wouldn't look that different. But actually, you all are very different people, as we've just found out. So what are those little pebbles in the jar which we can differentiate one another from? What can we recognize in each other? It's kind of trying to paint a better picture of who you are. Not just broad brushstrokes, but getting to the detail of who it is that you are that separates you from someone else. So open badges is a very simple thing, really. I've been generously called, the inventor of open badges. I was part of a Mozilla team. Mozilla is the kind of organization behind Firefox. It's a global nonprofit. I was part of that team, part of that original team. So I've spent 11 years very excited about putting data into an image. And that's all an open badge is, putting data into an image. And the great thing about standing in front of librarians is that I don't have to do what I usually do, which is explaining what metadata is. You know what metadata is. You use it all of the time in libraries. So this is metadata on the right-hand side. And you can put almost anything into it, really. The name of the badge. You can put who issued it. Who did you issue it to? Does it align with any standards? Is there any evidence behind it? And this is crucial for me. Because there's lots of people who pretend that they can do things in life. But the great thing about the evidence part of a badge is that you don't just say, oh, yeah, I can build a wall. You can show a video of you building a wall, anything that goes on the web. So all of a sudden, these credentials, this recognition is personal to you. Yeah? There might be lots of people with the same badge, but only one version of you showing how you can do that thing. One badge which shows me presenting on the stage as opposed to Josta doing it. So these are all the things you can put into a badge. And a bit like when I bake a cake with my daughter, it would be ridiculous after we've baked the cake to say, oh, I'll just go and get those eggs out of the cake, or I'll just get the flour out of the cake, or the sugar. Just as it would be ridiculous to unbake a cake, you can't unbake a badge. So once all of that metadata is hard-coded into the badge, you can't take it back out, which makes it kind of secure and verifiable. You can't pretend that it's someone else's badge. So here's just a fun example of a badge which I got recently. This is the Hofmeister, after David Hasselhoff, I'm sure lots of you know. And this is a stealth badge, which is very exciting. I didn't know I was going to get this badge. And I got this badge for helping someone out online. And someone issued me this badge for coming in and saving the day, not with Speedos on or swimsuits or anything like that, but going in and helping someone online. And that made my day, like just that little bit of recognition. You know, I'm not going to necessarily go and put it on my LinkedIn profile, but it made me realize that that's something that other people value and they recognize and they kind of, they see the value of it. So badges can be issued for anything. Badges don't have to be this big, chunky credential that you get after 4 years of study. A badge can be given for turning up. A badge can be given for a conversation, for recognizing a relationship. And it can do things like help you unlock job opportunities or for lifelong learning. You can have badges from when you're a child all the way through retirement and beyond. You can get them for online learning, as I'll show you in a moment. You can get them for professional development. You can get them for training. You can get them for anything you want at all. Anyone can issue a badge to anyone for anything. So what we're talking about now, as we found out when we started to talk to different people in the room, is we're making CVs and resumes three-dimensional. So it's not just a list of your jobs that you've done in your past and the degrees that you've got and all of those formal credentials. We're recognizing people for having empathy or being really good at working in a team or just being resilient in a pandemic, up a mountain, however you want to think. Or maybe just being a very good communicator. Yeah, so all of these different skills that we know are valuable within the workplace, in the home, within organizations, all of these skills we can recognize at a distance, up close to one another. I'm from We Are Open, a cooperative which I set up 6 years ago with these beautiful people. Brian, down there, he's the one who's done all the images. You saw him up a mountain with me earlier, back in December. And he's the one who's done the images, like I said. He is 6'10", which is 9 inches taller than me. And during the pandemic, he would often tell people on Zoom, I'm very tall, as if he needed to tell people that. You know, like, I'm very tall. You don't know it because you only see me on Zoom, but I'm very tall. And then down right at the bottom corner here, we've got an intern for the first time. So Laura and Anna, as you can see, have the same surname. Anna's Laura's niece, and they both live in Germany. One's in Dresden, one's further north. And that brought us a really interesting scenario for testing out badges. So Anna joined us last summer, and we never had an intern before, so we designed a whole program of things for her to do. And of course, we started designing some badges because that's what we've done for the last decade. We designed badges to recognize her getting better at the kinds of skills that she wanted during her internship. It turns out that they weren't necessarily the things that she wanted to learn during her internship. So we ended up co-designing badges with her. And that's the really valuable thing that's come out of her internship. She's awesome. I've been talking to her on Slack this morning. She is fantastic. And one of the things that she wanted to get a badge for was something which we don't really have a term for in English. But she's German. I think you have the same term in Dutch, which is jumping over your own shadow. She felt like she had to kind of get over herself a little bit so that she could communicate on behalf of the co-op, so that she wasn't hiding herself away, that she was getting over herself. So we co-designed a shadow jumping badge for her, not something we ever would have thought of, but co-designing badges is really important. These are some of the badges that we've issued to her already. So you can see the shadow jumping badge at the bottom right-hand corner, the picking up the reins badge, the taking over a project, the getting involved in the admin, whatever it is, the learning how to use Trello and different planning systems, different approaches. So a combination of badges that we knew that she'd like and some that we didn't know that she would like that we've co-designed with her. So before I ask you another question, I just want to tell you a couple of things. I've already said that anyone can issue a badge for anything, and that includes you being able to issue yourself a badge. Now, for some people, that might blow your minds, like why on earth would you issue yourself a badge? But if you look at this diagram, you can issue yourself a badge, someone else can issue you one. You can verify them, I'm going to talk about that later on. But you can also, and this is a really important point, you can endorse badges. So I could issue myself a bunch of badges, and then someone else, like say Justa, comes along and endorses my badges for public speaking. Or Jeroen endorses my badges for digital literacies, or chooses not to, says that I need to do some more work on them. So all of a sudden, this system of exchange and value becomes something that you have control of. It's not something which is done to you. You have control over it, and you can exchange and issue badges and credentials. So I'm going to ask you to turn to the same person, a different person on your table. You can get up and wander if you want. But what kind of badge, based on what you've heard so far, based on what you've heard in this conference, citizen science, that kind of thing, what kind of badge would you like to earn, and why?
I want to show people, want to be somebody who shows people how beautiful the environment is, and to love nature.
Oh, that's a great one.
Like
I guess you love that, Doug, too.
Like a nature-loving badge. And what would that mean to you? Why do you want to earn that one?
Because I think people don't look around a lot, and they always want to go away to other countries, and they don't love what is near them.
So you would be earning that badge as a way to encourage other people to love nature too?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, great. For all different kinds of reasons, people want to earn badges. So when you do start issuing badges, which I hope you do at some point in the near future, just remember that the reason that someone might want to earn something might be different from the reason that you want to give it. Yeah? And that's okay. So, as we move on then, why have I been unreasonably excited about putting data in an image for 11 years? Well, I think it's mainly because of these 4 reasons here. So starting at the top right-hand corner, badges and the standard behind them is free and open, which means that anyone can issue a badge for anything. The badges standard was kicked off by Mozilla, like we've talked about before, and it's looked after now by IMS Global Learning Consortium, a standards organization. So it's a very stable organization that's working on the kind of specification. You can become certified as an issuer, but you don't have to because the standard is free and open. Anyone can issue a badge for anything. The second one, which I've already talked about, is that badges are evidence-based or can be evidence-based, which means that instead of it being a bunch of claims about what you do, I claim that I can do this, it's a bunch of evidence. So it's not just, oh yeah, I'm great at teamwork, but here's me actually in action, doing some teamwork. Oh yeah, I can get up on a stage and talk in front of 100 people versus here's a video of me doing that, Justa, you've got a show reel on your LinkedIn profile. That's what you need to do to show what you can do as a person. Badges for that would be a similar kind of thing. They're also stackable. I'm going to show you later on learning pathways, the way in which you can choose to go in one direction or another depending on badges. But they're also stackable. And what I mean by that is that one library over here and another library over here can earn badges that kind of have a relationship with one another. Instead of everyone issuing the same information literacy badge, you can build on other people's. Yeah? So you don't have to keep reinventing the wheel. So they're stackable, and people can learn all the way through their life. And then finally, they're transferable. So you, as the person earning the badge, you can move them about. You don't have to have them just stuck in a silo, in a place, in one library or one organization. You can take your badges and you can move them around. You can store them offline. You can make them public. It's entirely up to you. So this is the way that it works in practice with the current version of the specification. Anyone, an individual, an organization, a library, a family, whoever, can issue a badge to somebody, and that person can accept or reject a badge. Now, if you issued me a badge for speaking too quickly, I might not accept it. I might reject it. But if I accept the badge, I can keep it just on my computer, or I can choose to make it public, or I can make it public to some people, share it with some people, up to me. And then some people can have a look at my badge, or collection of badges, and they can make some decisions about me. They can say, oh, that's cool, or they can let me into a university, or they can give me a job, or whatever it's going to be. And they can verify that that badge was issued to me through the same kind of technology that you trust when you do online banking. There's a website you can go to, badgecheck.io, and you can just put the badge in, put in the email address, and just double check that this is definitely a badge which was issued to this person. This is an example of one of my badges, and you can see this badge was issued to me on this date. One thing that I haven't mentioned, which some of you might be interested in, I don't know how well you can see it, but badges can expire. So I used to be a lifeguard, and I had to keep doing my lifeguard training every year or two. And if that was a badge, that would have expired, just like if you're a football coach, your kind of credentials expire. So that's something that you might want to kind of weave into your badges system as well. I'm going to give you 5 general examples of badges, just so you can see the scale of the system. And then I'm going to give you much more specific kind of library, knowledge-focused community examples of badges. So I'm going to run through the first 5 reasonably quickly, just to show you what's going on in the world, and then dive into kind of your environment a little bit more. So the first one is in the Netherlands, SURF Edu Badges. So SURF, who I'm sure most of you know, are issuing badges at a reasonable scale to educators, to students, to all different kinds of people for lots of different kinds of skills. You can see here 20 institutions are using open badges at the moment. They've got a platform which was previously using someone else's technology and is now, I'm told, they're building it here in the Netherlands, building their own kind of technology. The second one, in the UK, the Open University has a platform called OpenLearn, where anyone can go and learn about all different kinds of things, basic maths and English, skills around business, all those kinds of things. And you can earn badges as a result of that. So you can see here there's all different kinds of badges for resilience, forensic psychology, all of these things, all free, and you get a badge at the end of it to show that you've been doing some learning. Really valuable thing to do. The third example, just to show how big badges are, IBM has now issued millions of badges at this point. So this press release is from 2020, so 2 years ago. And at that point, they'd issued 3 million badges, mainly for things like blockchain and for cybersecurity, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, and for other technical things. And IBM actually have a policy that they want to hire fewer people with degrees and more people with badges, because they can train people and kind of recognize people's skills much faster than they can waiting for them to finish their degree. The fourth one is my favorite example, because it's got nothing to do with technology or education particularly. It's to do with gardening. I don't know how well you can see that, especially at the back, but you've got the Certified Gardner program from Colorado State University. And there's 2 reasons I like this. It's gardening, but also you can see it's a 3-part badging system. It's kind of a mini pathway by itself. So you've got the ability to identify trees and shrubs. That's a badge, tiny little badge. You've got a badge for pruning, chopping trees in the right places. And then they all build up into this trees and shrubs badge. And then that badge is just one of a mastery level badge. So all of a sudden you've got this kind of badges pathway ecosystem going on for gardening. Fantastic. And the 5th one, and this is only the third presentation that I've been able to talk about this one. My son, who's now 15, he was 4 when I started this. My son, who's now 15, is doing his very first kind of course, which is going to lead to a badge on cybersecurity. So this is through IBM, using a platform called Credly. There's a free element and a paid element to this, but he's really interested in this. When I was 15, there was no way I'd be able to learn about any of this, not only because the internet was in its infancy, but there was no credentials like this that I could have gone through. So all of a sudden, he can do his things at school, all of his subjects he's chosen, but he can do other things which he can put on his CV and follow all of his interests. And he'll have not just experience, but credentials and recognition to prove it. If you're sitting there thinking, this is great, I'm going to go and issue badges immediately as soon as I get home, the thing to beware of is there are lots of reasons why you want to issue badges, supply-side considerations. But at the end of the day, you have to think about, is anyone going to care about earning this badge? And there have been lots of examples over the last 10 years where people have created lots of badges and people haven't bothered claiming them, or have just thought, well, what's the point in that? Because it has to matter to the person who's earning it. Otherwise, what are we doing? What's the point of it? The other thing to point out, just before I ask you another question, is that you can create a whole taxonomy of badges. And I know, because I've worked with librarians in the past, how much you enjoy coming up with taxonomies and classification systems and tags, okay? Before you get into doing all of that, keep it really simple. So start doing something like this. This is just a very basic system we came up with for City and Guilds, who are a 140-year-old credentialing organization in the UK. The ones on the left are more to do with recognition, and the ones on the right are more to do with credentialing. And what I mean is this. On the left, you're recognizing that someone has done a thing. So participation, someone has contributed or someone has turned up to something. Membership is also a form of recognition. You are part of this group of people. You're in a union, or you have membership to the library, or you're part of this group. It's recognition. The ones on the right are to do with credentialing, and they're to do with reaching a particular standard. So you could issue an unlimited number of badges for anyone who gets to a defined standard. And then you can reserve some badges, maybe, for the creme de la creme. You know, the people who have gone above and beyond, the top 0.5% of people who have really got to grips with whatever skill or knowledge that you need, and you can have an award ceremony around this particular badge. And of course, just because you're giving a badge, which is an online credential, doesn't mean you can't give them a trophy and a certificate as well. Yeah? So the question I'm going to ask you now, based on what you've heard, which I realize is quite a lot, is what kind of badges might it be useful for your organization to issue?
An idea from someone else on the table. A badge for the volunteers working in the library.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
And why might...
It was also the idea of the table next for all the volunteers who are working at the library.
Yeah.
And I know it's an obvious question, and it seems like it has an obvious answer, but why would they want a badge for volunteering?
Because, well, for example, volunteers that didn't work for a long time, and now for the first time they do something in the library, then they can show it here.
So it proves they've been doing something constructive. And
exactly. Yeah.
Great, thank you for that. Okay, I've got a few more slides to do. It's telling me that I've got 30 of 101 slides, but I've got a lot of spare slides. And as Joost said when we were just having a break there, all of these slides are available, and I'm going to put the link to them on the screen at the end. So it's not just going to be the ones that I talk through, but there's going to be a lot of spare ones which might help explain some of the questions that you have in the short time that we've got together. So maybe the examples I give you now are even more relevant, but I am going to go through them relatively quickly because I want to get to the bit where I talk about how to issue badges. So last week in Leeuwarden, Stephen from Badge Collect was there, and he was talking about some work that he's doing in a city that I'm not going to be able to pronounce, which is called Deventer. Thank you very much. So all different kinds of joining together, and the libraries aren't involved in this project, which is interesting, but joining together different organizations to help people get into jobs, which is, obviously people who are excluded from the workforce, getting them to have credentials is an important thing to do, and building them around the individual person rather than doing it to them. The second one, and this is a German guy who's talking about the possibility of badges in a library context, and it's quite an interesting, it's all in English, and it's quite an interesting interview with him and his research into what kind of libraries are issuing badges and why. So that URL is far too long for you to write down, but you can click on it once you get the slides. The third one, and this one is close to my heart because this is where badges kind of started. This is Chicago, and in 2012, there was Chicago Summer of Learning. And so all different learning experiences in the city were joined together and funded through free bus transport, but also badges in all different places. And it wasn't that much of a success. And the reason was because they designed all these badges and they weren't badges the kids wanted to earn. So the number of badges issued and the number of badges claimed were completely out of odds. But it's kept going as a program, and now, 10 years later, it's massively successful because they've learned for the kind of things that kids want to learn and want to be able to prove they can do. You can see Minecraft being the top one there. Cities of Learning is also a thing which is kind of growing and around the world. So this is the Royal Society of Arts, the RSA in London. There are 2 cities in the UK that have been part of a pilot. So they are Brighton and Plymouth on the south coast. I'm campaigning to get Cities of Learning to go further north. I live right next to Scotland, so we'll see how that goes. This is a university library in Australia, and they don't talk about open badges. They talk about creds. Micro-credentials, creds. It doesn't matter what you call them, as long as you align with the Open Badges standard, as long as it's got that metadata in. You can call them medallions, you can call them balloons. It doesn't matter what you call them, as long as they actually work with the standard. This is a very interesting example. The Scottish Social Services Council, which is a mouthful, has been issuing badges since about 2014. And the reason I think this is a very innovative use of badges is because they issue badges when they publish a report. And they issue badges for doing things which are recommended in the report. So, for example, let's say a report recommends that healthcare professionals do this kind of hand cleaning or whatever it is, as opposed to that. You can earn badges for doing the things which are recommended in the report. So it's not just, oh, we've published a report and nobody's read it. You're issuing badges to encourage people to take up the recommendations. This is quite a popular site in the UK. It's called IDEA. And this is where you can go and do lots of little bits of learning and earn badges as a result. It's worth having a look at that. This is a book. I have not read this book, but there's quite a few books on badges, and this one in particular is about teaching with digital badges, best practice for libraries. If you're interested and want to order this one for your library, feel free. The Welsh government has issued some guidelines, design principles for badges used in libraries. So there's lots of people around the world using badges in libraries. This is Mississippi State Library. They're issuing badges for workshops. So they're doing workshops all the time, how to use Microsoft Excel, how to use different software packages, issuing badges to staff and to students as a result of that. There's loads of articles on why badges are useful in libraries. And there's also a new website from a badge platform called Accredible, badge-case.study. And this has lots of different case studies, if people in your organization need convincing. I'm not going to go through this slide in any detail. It's just basically the benefits for different groups of people if you issue badges. So I want to get to this bit just before I finish. When you choose a badging system, there are lots, more than 30 which are certified, and also more on top of that. There are at least 3 ways in which you could do it. You could build your own from scratch. You could hire a developer. You might be a developer yourself. The second way is kind of a modular system. So if you've heard of Moodle or WordPress or any of these open source systems, you can install them yourselves. They've all got extensions where you can issue badges using that platform. You install them, you own the data, but you don't have to code anything. The third option, which is what I'm going to talk about now, is more of an off-the-peg approach. So this is a specific badge platform, which has a free tier, and then you pay if you need to issue more badges. But because badges can be moved around, it's not going to lock you into anything. Loads of different platforms. The ones that we've used the most are Badger, Moodle. Moodle has it built in as part of its core features. Open Badge Factory, openbadges.me, and Participate. I wrote a blog post a few years ago which kind of talks about that a little bit. There's a wiki, which we look after at the co-op, called badge.wiki. You can go and have a look at that. And also IMS Global have certified badge platforms where people have paid money to be part of the list. In terms of badges, I've already shown you an example of what it looks like, but what I haven't shown you is the fact that when you get a badge or a collection of badges, you can go and put them on a different platform. So this is badges issued on one platform, Participate, and displayed on a different competitor platform, Badger. Badges are free and open and can be moved around. Anyone can issue a badge for anything. This is a badge that I was creating when I was at FURS. You just create the image, put all the metadata in that you need to put in, say whether you need to expire, all the criteria, evidence, whatever you want, press the button, issue. It's really, really simple. The hard thing is getting something which people want to earn. I promised I'd talk about pathways very quickly. Pathways are just when you think about progression and you think about, well, if someone earns this badge, what could they do next? What choices have they got? What do they need to know before they move on to that? This platform, Open Badge Passport, is a Finnish platform. And they have this built in, looks a bit like a subway map or like the underground, the London Underground. Badger also has it built in as pathways, so you have to earn this one before you go on to other ones. You can build that into your system as well. And as a gamer, someone who plays a lot on the PlayStation and other cloud-based platforms, it's a bit like on FIFA 22 Ultimate Team, where you have a skill tree and you level up. That's the kind of thing that we're doing. Badges don't have to be gamified, but they can be gamified as well. So what I'm excited to see in 2 years' time is to come back and see all of you issuing badges and all of your badge systems talking to each other. And instead of reinventing the wheel in Utrecht and Groningen, whatever, like literally talking to each other about how you can build this constellation of pathways.